Hi guys, so welcome to another episode of my lockdown editing. So today I'm actually up to week 8 of my weekly photo editing for Asian photographers. For this week I'm actually going to pick 2 works to edit. Let's have a look at the first one. So the first one is from Bangladesh. Let's bring that up. So Aneek Mustafa Anwar from Bangladesh, and he sent in a project about the death of Bangladeshi cinema, which is titled Celluloid Chronicles at the moment. Let's just full screen this. So earlier I had a look at, I had a read of the text. My first comment is I think your text, although very descriptive and goes into detail about what the project is, I feel that it's a bit lengthy. So my first tip now, off the cuff, would be I think you need to relook at your text. It's best to shorten it and just add key summary points, because right now I find it a bit lengthy. And I think there's a lot of information there that may or may not be necessary. And after my, once halfway through my second paragraph, I kind of, lost a bit of interest. So I think it's important, especially when doing projects, to be able to write a bit more concisely and write a bit more persuasively. So I think not all photographers are good writers. I mean, that's why we turn to the image and we make images, because we are more expressive or more versed with images. But that doesn't stop you from sort of working with someone that writes or writes much better. So don't be shy. Always look for alternatives. If you're not a good writer, seek help from a friend that writes better than you do, and come up with a text that works better, because I think the text is very important. So Anik has sent in a wide edit of 76 images. Let's have a look. Full screen. So the first thing that came to mind, the first question was, when I looked through your set of images, there were a lot of portraits. And then, so I was curious as to the portraits, like who the people were. So I clicked into the file to see if there were any sort of caption data, and there weren't any. So that's one question that I would have. Like, there was a lot of portraits with no context. So that's my first tip. For this project, when you take so many portraits, we need a bit of context as to like who these people are. I mean, one can make assumptions, right? But they're only assumptions. So I think it's important that if you take portraits like these, and a lot of them, you need context, you need captions. It's different if you were doing a mood piece that was purely poetic all the way, but yours isn't quite that. It speaks with a very documentary language, sort of journalistic language. So that's why captions are needed. My second inclination is that because this is about cinema, well, I've seen a few projects done about a similar subject. There's a guy that did, a friend of mine that did one in a cinema in Singapore as well, but it was very poetic, and there was no need for captions, and it was beautifully done, and it it worked the way it was. But that's okay. I think. But what I'm sensing or what I'm feeling is that this is a project that, because it's about cinema and moving images, maybe you could consider this not just a still image project. Maybe there's room for moving images, for film, for video. And when I was scrolling through them, that was kind of my yearning, you know, to see more than still images, whether there was audio or there was video, or even audio, So I think that's something that you might want to consider, that you make the project beyond just still images, whether you work with audio, because cinema is so rich. It's about worlds that people, that the man on the street goes into this cinema complex and then lives another world, escapes to another world, and that world is full of sight and sound, which at the moment is being lost, as you are suggesting. This box is being torn down, so it might be an effective technique or device to incorporate the elements of cinema beyond just walking in and wandering around these sites as a still photographer. That's something for you to consider. I think it'll certainly enrich the work and give new sort of reading, or give the audience like me now looking at it a richer experience. So yeah, that's my tip. So having said that, now I will try and edit or make some sense of an edit. Okay, so it looks like I've come to an edit, but before I show that, let's just mull over a few points. So Aneek, it looks like you've been to a few sort of sites and photographed the different cinemas. You've also captured very broadly the subject matter, looking at the sites and the people and the patrons and all that, which is fair and fine, but sometimes I think when you try and capture everything about the subject, it can get a bit confusing, like this one, for example. This image, without context, it's them sort of praying and we don't know who they are. So I think sometimes with projects, when we try to say a lot about a particular subject matter, some of it might get lost because there's so much to talk about and there isn't any particular emphasis on one thing that threads the narrative or whatever it is you're trying to say together. So a trick is not to necessarily try and say everything about a particular story or subject, but to pick one important thing and then place all your emphasis on that, because it's better to say one thing strong and well rather than try and say so many different things without being effective about it. The medium of photography is very limited. It doesn't speak, it doesn't, you don't hear, you don't smell, and it's a static frame. So it imparts a limited amount of information. So we need to use that as we should understand its limitations and then work within those limitations. So your wide edit is 76 images, and I've cut it down to 12 images. So let's just see what I did. So what I've done here is I've picked out what I believe are frames from different sites and paired them with a portrait that could be a subject significant to that site, and then sequenced it that way. So I don't see, I don't necessarily show the rest of the stuff. The edit that I picked doesn't necessarily show the rest of the stuff, the patrons, the exterior, what it looks like, you know. So it's one picture of one site and one subject belonging to that site. So let's have a look. One. So this dilapidated screen, one subject, another site, another subject, another site, another subject. And I think it's nice here because actually the subjects, this one, you know, it could be someone working there, but it shows the detail of, you know, the steps going up to the cinema has been, you know, they use the place as a kitchen, you know, so it shows that, you know, it's not as, its heydays are gone, the cinema's heydays are gone. So it's different to this, you know. So there's a difference in the in who the subjects are, particular to the site. Moving on, so this one, then it goes to the projector room where it's the lone guy. So every, like I said in many other edits that I've shown in my videos, it's all about creating a world and maintaining us and keeping the audience in that world. So in this world, the cinema is a very lonely place. There's only one person in the cinema all the time. And they are very lonely because basically the heydays are gone and people are no longer coming to the cinema. So in this sort of manner, manner where you just show one person per site, it accentuates whatever it is you're trying to say with all those other words in your synopsis. The thing about photography or photo projects like this is that I believe that photo projects are the beginnings of a conversation. It's never, photo projects are never the be all and end all. So you use photo projects to start a conversation. So you start, and then, for example, if you do an exhibition or you do a book or you do an artist talk, that is the opportunity for you to expand and elaborate on other points and introduce other points. So when you do a project like this and you edit it, you want to pick one point and stress it well so that when an audience encounters the project, you know, they get it, they're not confused by a lot of different sort of messaging and too much material. They get it, they're interested, and then they engage you. Whether they engage you in an artist talk or an exhibition, and that's when you can, in a longer form, talk about the other aspects and the other sort of materials or research that you've collected, and the engagement is richer then. But while it's, you know, for a project like this, when you put it up online or you submit it, you know, there isn't enough time for that long conversation, you know. So it's got to be well threaded, to the point, and, you know, not too confusing. So I think that's how this edit is done. Thank you so much, Aneek. Hope that helps. Okay, so let's have a look at number 2. So my second pick this week is from Indonesia, Ian Hananto. The project is called Lost in Translation. 2 months ago, me and my girlfriend agreed to marry in October 11th, 2020. First off, congratulations, Ian. Okay, so Ian lives in Solo. I believe Aji, which I edited like a few weeks ago, also lives in Solo. And it seems like the project, you know, there's some similarities in the project. It's about marriage, wife, and additional stuff here is that there's a bit of reflection with the father who asked him, "Are you really ready?" Okay, so in summary, it's like pre-wedding jitters, right? Okay, don't worry, Ian, it's all good. Sooner or later, we all get married, and, you know, life moves on. Okay, let's have a look at the images. He submitted 40 images. Okay, it's not that wide. Ian, your submission, the wide edit is actually not wide enough. But let's see what we can do. I think, as I've mentioned many times, the wider your edit is, the more images you have, the more outcomes you can create or explore. When you have limited amount of images, there's only so much you can do and maneuver. There's only so many beginning, middles, and ends you can have. But having said that, let's have a look and see what we can do. Let's go full screen. Okay, so let's see, 41 images. Let's see what number we arrive at. I'm going to start culling it down. So let's go. So I've cut Ian's images down to 10. I'm being generous here because actually 10 out of 40, that's 25%. That's still a very high number. But let's just see. So I've got this image here, but I just want to stress a point. This image is very typical of those that take black and white photography, where you do a flash, overexpose, and a silhouette. So I just wanted to leave this here just to to talk about this point. So it's almost become like a cliche for me. So that's, of these 10 images, I'm actually going to remove that as a maybe point to make to Ian, and hopefully that helps. That I think we should try and avoid repeating imagery that is already very that are tropes. So let's remove that. So that brings us to 9 images. Now I've sequenced it. Now I've also done this edit just to, based on what I've read of Ian's work, and also as a challenge to Ian to maybe consider, new ways of narrating or telling stories. So I've actually just picked up on the cat. So this sequence is threaded all around the cat. And using the cat as a metaphor for all that he wants to express about the pre-wedding jitters, about family life, whether he's ready for it, the reflection point with the father. And I'm also picking up on the cue that Ian, you did shoot a lot of pictures of your cat, so why don't we just use the cat as a metaphor, as a thread to piece everything together. So I have a sequence. I've sequenced it. So I've actually picked this one. You, in your submission, you actually picked this first image as well. So I'm actually going to follow you on that. So this is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's almost a narrative of the family cat that births a family, but then meets its demise as a means of a sort of subtle metaphorical narrative based on some of the text. Of course, you might need to readjust your text, but I kind of like what this edit does. I've seen some of your work before, Ian, and I think this is maybe this sort of direction could be a challenge to you to actually just focus on the cat as a subject. I like this, this shape here goes to this shape here. So that's the Q along there. And Here is the visual cue is the light, and then it comes back here in the dog's eyes. This suggests something sinister is about to happen at some point. And then, of course, this shape comes back in the shape of the grave, the dugout grave. And then this last image, looking out, speaks to the first image looking out at the light. This and this, yeah. And then this and this. So nine image sequence centered around the cat as a metaphor, life, the life of a cat with a family, ups and downs, and the demise. But this suggests that, there's continuity. So that's my edit. Hope, Ian, hope that helps, and it gives you new sort of suggestions as to perhaps how you could continue making images, whether it's on this particular subject matter, boredom, COVID-19, pre-marital jitters, and importantly, companionship, because I think essentially what you're talking about in your synopsis is about the marriage with your wife, whether you're ready for the commitment and all that. It's about companionship. So I think this edit in a subtle way using the cat, also talks about companionship. Although not so abstractly and so, or literally for that matter. Okay, so hope that helps. Thanks everyone. So I picked two, Aneek from Bangladesh and then Ian from Indonesia. So that wraps up week 8 of my weekly editing for Asian photographers. As I mentioned previously, I'm heading into the last few weeks of this effort. I think I'll do a few more, so keep them coming. So thanks everyone for watching. Keep safe, keep well, and see you next time.